ranges, and they reallocate them to cell phones and Internet of Things devices and stuff. RAV equipment, as the older stuff phases out over time. So we were in that process. So we have a couple new microphones. Seem to be working good. And on Wednesday night, you'll get to use the new handheld mic. So actually, this past Wednesday, Matt started with this, and we had a problem, and we switched it to that one and back. So we're learning. Not as easy as plug and play, but we're learning. So, well, good morning. We're going to study Isaiah. I'm going to look at chapter 4 and the beginning of chapter 5, and studying didn't go so well today. But I buried 2 kittens that I found, and I brought the third one home. I thought he was dead. When I grabbed him, he squealed. I petted on him, and he's like, he didn't move. He was dead. I went to pick him up, and he squealed. I was like, well, I didn't know what to do, so I brought him home. So we'll see if he survives or not. Huh? Shop. At the shop. Yeah. Yeah, I got a bunch of cats.
The lady that died 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
she used to put them out there, and she had all kinds of cats. And now that she's gone, you see maybe 3 or 4.
Yep. They multiply rapidly. We had 16 of them fixed, so that'll help a lot. But I think I got a.
She left animals, and she had dogs. The cats stayed up late. But now, like I said, now that she's gone, they're not as many.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't feed them. They'll find new places to get fed. So Isaiah chapter 4. Isaiah chapter 4 is a very short chapter. It's a whopping 6 verses. So that's it. Chuck covered a little bit on last week, but that's all it is. It's a critically people twist it one way versus another way. So I spent more time trying to understand why. So I'm hoping I can convey that a little bit. The first verse of chapter 4 actually goes with Isaiah 3. And I'm convinced of it. It goes with that, and it's a transition of it. Isaiah chapter 3 was really the sad state that Israel was in, and the sad state the people were in particular women. So picking up in Isaiah 3:24, instead of perfume, there would be rottenness, and instead of a belt, a rope, instead of a well-set hair, baldness, instead of a rich robe, a skirt of sackcloth, and branding instead of beauty. Your men shall fall by the sword, and your mighty men in battle, and her gates shall lament and mourn. Empty she shall sit on the ground. Israel got in this state because of what? Basically not following God. So this is really where Israel got to be. And this is you looked at this rule as a prophecy of the coming Babylonian. Yeah. And this is really what it is.
Look, there's 4 things that he's talking about in Isaiah.
Yeah.
He's talking about the capturing in Babylon captivity.
Captivity in Babylon.
The coming of Christ.
Coming of Christ.
The first time.
Yeah, the first time.
The destruction of Jerusalem. The coming of Christ the second time. 4 things.
Well, yeah, that was, I would say, the 4 prophecies would go with that. The Babylonian captivity. Some stuff we'll look at today can be maybe Assyrian and Babylonian captivity, close enough. But you're right. The coming of Christ, the destruction of Jerusalem, and the second coming of Christ. So the state they were in, and it says in verse 1 of chapter 4, and 7 women shall take hold of one man in that day, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own clothes. Only let us be called by your name. Take away our reproach. This is just a ruin of God's chosen people. They were his people, his beloved people, and we're going to see how much he loved them. And they got into this situation. So Kaufman said, every Jewish woman considered childlessness to be the most terrible earthly reproach. There's a lot of childless people out here today, and I'm glad that's not really still the same rationale. But I can understand in a place where your kids had to take care of you, kids had to run the farm, I can see that. And where women were treated like property. If you don't have kids, then something wrong with you, is how I can see how they could be viewed that way. What were these women offering in order to take away this reproach? And why were they so desperate? So what were these women offering? Hey, we want to have kids. 7 women would go to one man with this offer, just in order to have kids. What's that? Yeah, well, more than just themselves. What else was in the offer? They're going to take care of themselves. I want to have kids with you, but I'll feed myself. I'll wear my own clothes that I bought my own. Camille did not come with this kind of guarantee. There was no way that she came that she fed herself or came with her own clothes. It's just, it didn't come. Maybe you guys have got something better than I got, but she does work. She does. I'm not going to say she doesn't. So, and she does. She's doing well now. But yeah, I just quite the offer them. They're going to come and they're going to take care of their own bill. They just want kids. How many came in at one time? 7 women for one guy. That's a lot. That's a lot. So why were they so desperate? Look at that above there. There weren't any men left. Yeah, they've died in battle, and the ones that are there maybe just not really in great shape anyways. The cream of the crop worked. Yeah, you're right. Gone, especially if you look at it as Babylonian captivity, where the first wave disappears. The man, a man with 7 women chasing him may not be as desperate as you think, especially when they'll feed him. But yeah, life will be a strange place. What was it during World War II that 1 out of every 4 men was gone here in this country? Is that the stat I've usually heard? 1 out of 4 men gone. That's a crazy statistic. I guess Vietnam, still a big chunk of men were gone in Vietnam. And the country just ran different. I know with World War II, my grandmother worked in a factory. The only time she worked in her entire life, outside of the home, was she worked in a factory. The place worked different. But 7 women to 1 man, it's a big change there. So anyways, it goes with the what did I say? It goes with the ruin of God's people, is where we're at. We pick up in verse 2 and go forward from there. Verse 2, chapter 4, Isaiah. "In that day the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and honor of the survivors of Israel." In contrast to the reproach and desperation of God's people, the ruin of God's people, start seeing a positivity here. What positivity do you see just in this verse as things start changing? What positive words do you see?
Honor of the survivor.
Pride and honor, yeah. Those are good words. You did not see that earlier when you were looking at perfume being the smell of death and stuff. Pride and honor are factored into this right here. I got 2 more positive words that I see. Beautiful and glorious, yeah. So you got beautiful and glorious and pride and honor. These are the contrasts. So Israel got to this state, but in contrast, you start seeing these things. What will bring this about? And this is where some of the thing will. There's really one answer, but some people see it a different way. So what will bring about beauty and glory and pride and honor? The branch of the Lord. The branch of the Lord is what? In that day, the branch of the Lord He brings this. What do you think the branch of the Lord is? It's got to be Christ. It has to be Christ. What's that? The first coming. Yeah, not the second coming. The second coming is a whole different story. No, I don't. For those in Christ, you see beauty, glory, pride, and honor, but definitely not the rest. So yeah, there'd be the first coming of Christ. And that's why it's predicted as the branch. I don't think he's really referred to as the branch with the second, because it's not. The whole thing with the vine is really where the branch gets to be. The root of Jesse, the vine. That wouldn't be a good metaphor for the second coming of Christ. I wouldn't see it that way. Jeremiah 23, 5 through 6. Actually, in Isaiah, this is the first time that in the Bible that they use the vineyard to represent God's people. They use the vine. Anyways, in Jeremiah 23, 5 through 6, and there's some other places too, but I want to look at the branch. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch. And he shall reign as king and deal wisely, and shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In his days Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell securely, and this is the name by which he will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. So what do you think the branch of the Lord is if you look at Jeremiah 23, 5 through 6? Do you think the branch is anything other than Jesus Christ? I can't see it in this part. I mean, called the Lord is our righteousness. Is anybody else called that? No. Anybody else reign as king and deal wisely, execute justice and righteousness in the land? You don't really see that, you know. So it's only with Christ that the branch is who that would be. Back to 2 through 4. Who does the branch bring prosperity to? In that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and honor of the survivors of Israel. So who gets the prosperity? The survivors of Israel. What do you think that is? Some versions of the Bible, I looked in the King James, the New King James, the American Standard. They don't use survivors of Israel. They say escaped of Israel. So it's another clue. What do you think those are? Who do you think those people are? Your daughter's looking for you, Clive. I saw her out there. So, you know, that's the ones that escaped Lebanon, the Pharisees are good. Those who've escaped law, the legalism, the lawfulness, the law itself. They've survived that and they've escaped that. It can be Jews who were under that system all their lives and have seen a better way and have come out of it. I think that's the way I would look at it, was that transition. What about us? Would we be that way? Do we survive Israel? Do we escape Israel? Don't live by the law. Most of us were never under law, but at the same time, most of us were under, if you come from the outside, you were under your own law, your own code of ethics or whatever, defining what was moral and what was wrong, right, and what was, so you had your own kind of law. So it comes to the ones who survived Israel, and you can also, I'm not going to go there. Yeah, let's look at it that way. We're just picking up in verse 3, and he who is left in Zion or remains in Jerusalem will be called holy. Everyone who has been recorded for life in Jerusalem, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and cleansed the bloodstains of Jerusalem from its midst by a spirit of judgment and a spirit of burning. So how does the branch, I'm going to go back to this because you can say I spent a lot of time trying to figure this out, but it can go a different direction. But how does the branch rescue them to survive or escape Israel? In verses 3 through 4. It's through his son, the branch. The branch is the son. What does the son do? In verse. Say it again. Yeah, you say wash away the filth in verse 4. There's to cleanse the bloodstains of Jerusalem. You definitely see that, okay? And that's what Christ does. He does that. I want you to see that. I'm going to point out what the other side sees. There are some people who look at this and they don't see the branch as being Christ, and they don't see the church. They don't see Christianity what they see is a rebirth of Israel. They see the decline of Israel, and then this branch they look at as more of a shoot. You know, we know the branch is used in several idioms around, and it being the root of Jesse, not just a root, but they look at this as Israel restarts and rekindles and grows. So they look at verse 3 as who is left in Zion remains. They look at these as survivors inside of Jerusalem who rebuild and regrow. And that's what they see, but they miss the part that's the symbolism of Christ. Right. They could take that remnant that comes back, like I say, Ezra and Nehemiah, that remnant comes back and it grows. We also know what it grew into. Yeah. No. It doesn't cleanse away the blood stains. Like you say, the Pharisees actually make it even worse than the law was. The law was written, it was concise, and but the Pharisees created their own laws and held people accountable, that kind of thing. Probably the travesty in this, and I tend to do this kind of thing, like I've capitalized the word branch in the yellow part, but it's not capitalized in the text. But if it was capitalized, you'd have the tendency to only see Christ. So, right, wrong, I'm not going to try to tell people how to translate something, but if it was capitalized, you'd only see Christ. You know, and I think that's the way. And I typically, anything that's a metaphor for Christ, a name of Christ, I capitalize it as if it's his name. So, that's how I do things, personally. Clive? Oh, does it really? New King James capitalizes it. Very cool. I'm in tune. I used the New King James for a long time, and I liked. That was my personal thing. I had an NIV, and I found the New King James, and it sounded more regal in a lot of places. But now I've kind of switched to ESV, which I like to switch around on things, but this is where I'm at for now. Last verse, when the Lord shall have washed away the filth, the daughters of Zion, and cleansed the... Other translations have something other than a spirit of judgment and a spirit of burning. Spirit of water and spirit of fire. I think I've seen that too. I think that's, and then again, Christ comes with both of those too. So, Susan? Rebirth. Yep. Rebirth by water and fire with Nicodemus. I think you're right. I think I've seen that in verse 4. If we had a different PowerPoint type system, which they have, with even multiple screens, we could pull up another version and have that on their slideshow. But we don't have that. In verse 5, Isaiah 4, 5 and 6, then the Lord will create over the whole side of Mount Zion and over her assemblies a cloud by day and a smoke and the shining of a flaming fire by night, for over all the glory there will be a canopy. There will be a booth for shade and by day from the heat, and for refuge and a shelter from the storm and rain. Said you can see the people who are rebirth of Israel people, you can see this. It talks about a whole site and the people there. But we're not going to go that way. We're going to talk about Christ being that root that makes this change. So what Old Testament imagery do you see in this rescue? Because that's really what it is. He rescues us from the law. So what Old Testament imagery do you see in verses 5 and 6? The smoke, the cloud of smoke. Cloud by day, the smoke and the shining fire by night. Right? Chuck? Yep. Moses led them from captivity to freedom physically. Yeah, it's the Moses. Yeah, it's the parallel. Moses is physical from the captivity in Egypt to the freedom of the promised land, really. And you're right. This is the spiritual parallel of this with Christ. It leads us from the captivity of sin to the freedom in the church, in His body, in heaven. Yeah, the kingdom. In the kingdom, we'll just call it the kingdom as it goes from there. What else do you see? There's one more that I see. There's a word you probably don't use very often in verse 6. Unless you're on a toll road. They don't even have those anymore. They don't have the toll booths anymore, do they? Just drive through. That always seemed like the job, wasn't it? You just stick out your hand and I don't know how those people did that job. So there'll be a booth for shade. So what's the booth? You can see probably two images with this. But as they traveled for 40 years, they had their tents and that they had shelter with. And that's part of when they have the festival of booths, the festival of tabernacles, Feast of Tabernacles. They camp out with that, just to remember that. But the one that God provided for refuge and shelter was the tabernacle. He had Moses build a big tent for that. I got this question here. So, I'll go all those. So what does God use to lead to rescue today? And where does He dwell? It's us. You know, actually both answers is us. Look at that. Chuck got a half word answer for. Good job, Chuck. That may even be appropriate. Your record right there. 2-letter answer that answers both questions at once. That may be a new record, Chuck. Yeah, He uses us to lead to rescue today. Where does He dwell? He dwells in us. Because us, the body of Christ, you know, it's the Word of Christ, but it's the body of Christ, it's the church, and He dwells in us. So that's the parallel right there. All right, moving on to chapter 5. So, chapter 3 had the Israel's decline. Chapter 4 kind of transitions and it says that Christ is coming and it's going to fix this. I want to cover the first 7 verses of chapter 5, the vineyard of the Lord and its destruction, and Chuck can pick up after that. So, Isaiah 5, 1-2. Let me sing. I'll get the whole thing in the first 7 verses, then we'll come back for it. Let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it. He hewed out a wine vat in it, and he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard? What have I done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste, it shall not be pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah for his pleasant planting. And he looks for justice, but behold, bloodshed, or righteousness, but behold, an outcry. All right. So, it starts out with, let me sing a song for my beloved. Isaiah writes a song, or sings a song. And it was probably sang at that time. Or could be. I'm almost surprised that we don't have a song like that, but maybe not. Isaiah sings a song for my beloved. Who is my beloved? It's got to be God, right? It's got to be God. That's who sing, especially when you see that my beloved had a vineyard, and when you understand that the vineyard is the house of Israel, the men of Judah, it's the nation of Israel. It's His people. Is what the vineyard is. What does the vineyard represent? Well, I just told you, it's the house of Israel. Where else do you see a vineyard used in the Bible? Where else do you see that? Christ, as the parable of the vine dressers, definitely, where he has a vineyard and basically the prophets, it's really the prophets are killed all one by one, and even the son of the landowner comes and they kill him too. And that's the parable of killing the prophets and killing the Son of God. So you see that vineyard. Anywhere else? The workers of the vineyard? Yeah. With the wages? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, the workers and the wages they received. So the guy that was there all day got one wage, and the guy that was there just minimal time, he signed up, he still got the same wage. And that's a vineyard represents the church, the kingdom, the same way. Jesus said he is the vine, and you are the branches, which we just said he was the branch, so now we're him. And again, we know that. The church is his body, and we are the church. So, a lot of... Anything else? I think with the Babylonian captivity, as they took out the 3 waves, they left some people there, and I think vine dressers were one of the categories of people that stayed in Babylon. I think that was one of the categories, caretakers and vine dressers. When the spies came into Canaan originally, they saw men as big as grasshoppers as big. Yeah, we were like grasshoppers the size of their men, yeah. But how big were they measured the crops and stuff there with grapes. How big were the grapes? Am I right on this? Okay. Took 2 men to carry one bunch of grapes, one cluster of grapes. That's a lot of grapes. That's some big grapes. You go down to Publix, you can find grapes anywhere from the champagne grapes, which are tiny finger size, smaller than that, I guess, really. I'll clear up to muscadines, but I don't know that you're going to find anything so heavy that it takes 2 guys to lift it. So, yeah, you see a lot of, the vineyard is throughout. And then continuing in Isaiah 5, verse 2, well, my beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it. He hewed out a wine vat and he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. What shows the great care and love that God had for his vineyard? Oh, let me ask you this. In the Garden of Eden, is it ever referred to as a vineyard? I thought it was, but I can't find any evidence of it. But it would have to have a vineyard in the Garden of Eden, right? So tell me about the great care and love that God had for his vineyard. Great care and love that he took to build and plant Israel. He defended them, yeah.
So much so that there's a watchtower.
There's a watchtower in defense. Where did he build them? At the end of verse 1. A very fertile hill. Not just a hill, not a valley, not a very fertile hill. He dug it, so he basically planted everything on itself. He cleared out all the stones, planted with choice vines. You can see, it was a hand, God carried Israel by hand. It's not like it says that he put it in care of others. He basically did the work himself to set up Israel. The phrase on a very fertile hill, it's translated from Hebrew, and that's kind of on a horn of the son of oil, which, quite honestly, if you just left that in there, it'd been pretty cool. But luckily it's not, because I don't know that I would ever got what it means. But a horn is typically a hill. And where it says the horn of the son of oil, and son represents family. And you see that with like Matthew, where it starts out with the genealogy, and Israel's its family. And oil being fatness or fertility. So God put it in a place for it to build a big family, for it to be fertile, to be fat. He didn't put it in a place to struggle. And even though that's not necessarily a physical thing, but Israel was set up to succeed as a vineyard. What were the choice vines that God used to plant Israel? What were the choice vines that yield good fruit? Or who? The nation of Israel started with who? Jacob had the name Israel, so Abraham, and you got one between them, right? Isaac. That's typically what people say. I would say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be the choice vines that really started the vineyard. So we even got a song about it in VBS, if nobody's ever heard it. Excuse me. It'll come in June. Guaranteed that song will be sang. So wild grapes aren't just simply unprofitable or useless. I got Jameson on there by mistake. But they're offensive, noxious, and poisonous. That's kind of what wild grapes are. I have wild grapes at the house. And I've eaten one or two here and there. I am not going to eat a handful of them just because I couldn't tell you if they're okay to eat or if they're poisonous. So I'll just take it as once in a while. Jameson of the Jameson, Fawcett, and Brown commentary, he also says that these wild grapes may not even be grapes, but maybe even like nightshades and stuff like that. So that's what he got. God planted a vineyard to get good grapes, but what he got was poison. So, and now, O inhabitants of Israel and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard? That I have not done it? What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? That I looked for it to yield grapes? Why did it yield wild grapes? So God's, in the song, God asks the question, what else could I do? Why does it, I wanted to yield grapes, why is it yielding something else? What more could God have done for Israel? Where did he go wrong? Why didn't it not yield good fruit? No, you can't. I wouldn't want to even try, to be honest, no. It's free will. They make mistakes. They do stupid things. I think you start seeing that in Judges, the cycle there. I think the scripture says everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And you see a circle in Judges that when they're in God's will, things go well. And then they think they're doing it themselves and things start going downhill. And they get so far away from God's will that he takes away the protection. He knocks down the hedges. He lets the neighbors in. And wars and destruction, and they yell back for God. Things are good when they had God, and they call for God, and God sends a judge and fixes it. So it's a circle. But over time, these circles start out small, and the circle gets bigger and bigger. And the only fix is the branch. The only fix is Christ. But his free will is a big chunk of that. Brent, do you have something?
This goes back to what Jesus said about the parable of the sower. God did all the right things. He took out the rocks. He used the fertile soil.
I like that. Yeah, the parable of the sower, you look at that. He took out the road. He took out the rocks. He took out the thorns. He planted Israel in the best soil to make it grow. He took everything out. He brought in their own rocks and brought in their own things. Even when he brought them into Canaan, they lived in houses they didn't build. They ate crops that they didn't grow. All they had to do was get rid of the bad influences. It says verses 3 through 4, which was verses 5 through 6. And now I will tell you that what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste, it shall not be pruned or hoed. The briars and thorns will grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain, no rain on it. So what's God's plan for his vineyard? He took great care in where he put it. He put great care in planting it and making sure it grew. But didn't do. So now what?
Kind of, to me, looks like you wanted to be part of the world, okay? You're gonna find out what the world's like.
Yeah, you want to be part of the world, now you're going to find out what it is. Yeah, if you had a vineyard and you take down the walls, now the outside, and I'm sure it's your house the same way. I continue to fight the jungle at my house. You know, I could fight the jungle every weekend. I live in a swamp or in the woods, and it creeps in. The trees get bigger, the vines come in, the weeds and stuff. My parcel of ground gets devoured, and your vineyard would be the same way. You ever seen a building that gets abandoned, just left? It don't take long for the building to look abandoned. The power plant on US 1, the OUC building? Yeah. You look at a place like a restaurant or something that closes. In a month, you'd think that place had been out of business for a year. The vines take over, the world takes over.
That you drive by and I look at it, it's really, really dilapidated. Butchers and everything are taken over and everything like that. All these houses and houses have been just totally neglected.
Yeah, they become totally decrepit. I've seen roofs sag. If you lived in it, you don't see the roof sag and stuff. I mean, over time, but it's almost like as people stop living in it, nature devours it, and that's what he's going to do with the vineyard. If you want to be part of the world's coming in. He's going to take away the hedges, the protection, and they're not going to prune, trim, not even get rain. So what's God's plan? He's abandoned, yeah. People abandoned him first. Yeah, it's no longer the vineyard. It's not producing grapes. It's not producing what it was designed to do. It abandoned him first. He's going to walk away. But we know the end of the story, and his end of the story is concentrate on something else. He'll plant something new. How do you think Israel received this news? Isaiah gives this message to them with this beautiful song. It's on the top 40. You hear it on Sunday with Casey Kasem. How do you think Israel got this news? How do you think they liked it? Didn't like it? No. Us? What do you mean? We're doing great here. Other than that stuff we don't like. But you're right. I mean, they get to the point where they don't have a copy of God's Word. They don't have regular worship. They don't offer sacrifices. Yeah, part of them probably, what are you talking about? I think you see in, like in the New Testament, the words like this would come out. You see two responses. When you talk about Israel and how it's just not working out, one response is the weeping and gnashing of teeth. You take like Acts chapter 6, when Stephen basically tells them this kind of thing. You know, God made you his people, and you just didn't do, you did terrible. And the weeping and gnashing of teeth that killed, they had to stone Stephen. And you have the Acts 2, where those people could be cut to the heart and say, what do we got to do? What do we got to do to get right with God? It could be either way. But knowing the story of Israel, it doesn't go that way. They don't look to get better, by and large, as a whole. Verse 7, for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed for righteousness, but behold, an outcry. It takes 7 verses for him to go ahead and say this is what the vineyard represents. We looked at it from the start. You've probably heard a new song on the radio or something that you start listening to it, and by the third verse, you start realizing what it all means. And this is really for Israel, as they heard it for the first time, they might have thought one thing, but by the time they get to verse 7, it's us. God looked for justice in his vineyard. But instead of finding justice, he found bloodshed. And we see that in the New Testament. They took advantage of the weakest. Looked for righteousness, but found outcry. He would remove all protection from Israel. They get overran by the Assyrians. They get overran by the Egyptians. They get overran by Babylon. A new vineyard would grow from the branch. A new vineyard grows from Christ, and that's where it'll go in the future. So Chuck will pick up next week with Isaiah 5, probably verse 8. So thank you all.